ESPN's S&P Plus metrics are out, and that Oregon hype train, it's on the tracks.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Sean Stewart expected to return to Oregon men's basketball. What does that mean for Dana Altman and company? And I'm going to look at Oregon's offense through a uniquely awesome lens. I just had to let that sit for a moment. You will understand later on the show. What you have to understand right now is that ESPN's Bill Connelly every single year, and this gets updated throughout the year as well with information that comes in during the spring and heading into the season in the fall, releases metrics called S&P Plus, and Oregon is second in the country. S&P Plus factors in four primary areas: returning production, which Oregon is much higher this year than they were a season ago. Recent history, literally only 3 teams had a better season than Oregon last year in the entire country. Recent recruiting, Oregon has done that exceptionally well. And coaching change effects. Now here's the interesting thing. That typically gets slanted more towards a head coaching change. I was a little surprised with 2 brand new coordinators at the helm, who I will mention later on today's show, that Oregon is sitting there at 7th. And I'll give you 5 seconds if you haven't looked at these rankings yet to guess, who do you think is number 1? If ESPN's S&P Plus rankings were to have its own AP poll, which is basically what this is an analytical, data-driven AP poll. But there's no, subjective voting. It's just objective data applied to every single program in the country, all 138 of them. Who do you think number 1 would be? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's Ohio State. And that doesn't surprise me in the slightest, because I have looked at each of these 2 programs and what they have done over the last several years, and there have been a lot of similarities between the 2. They have in many ways mirrored one another, aside from the fact that Ohio State won the Rose Bowl and Oregon won the regular season game. If you just remove the head-to-heads, these 2 programs, from a narrative and trajectory standpoint, have been mirror images of one another in many ways. So, they both just had at least one major coordinator turnover. For Oregon, it was both. And for Ohio State, they lost their offensive coordinator, Brian Hartline. He's the head coach of South Florida. They bring in Arthur Smith from the NFL. They both recruit at an incredibly high level. Obviously, both are now a part of the Big Ten. They both lost to Indiana last year. Oregon did so twice, of course. Going into 2024, they were both seen as national title contenders, and they were, because they had a host of key returning players. And after that year, they sent a bunch of players into the NFL draft and had to reset from a veteran transfer quarterback to a young 5-star quarterback that started at another school. All of those things, kind of crazy, apply to these teams. Now, Oregon has a little bit more with regards to the returning production from a year ago component, because Ohio State is about to see, I think, 3 guys go in the first round: Caleb Downs, Arvell Reese, and who's the other one? Carnell Tate, the wide receiver. They also, of course, have Chris Henry Jr. coming in, who Oregon almost flipped at the last minute. They still have Jeremiah Smith. But they've got a quarterback who I really like in Julian Sayin. And he and Dante Moore, you want me to throw another similarity at you? Here you go. Both teams' seasons ended last year losing to a more veteran head coach and quarterback because their young five-star quarterback that doesn't have as many starts and was starting for the first time made at least one or two or more major mistakes. Ohio State was going to beat Miami, it looked like, and then Julian Sayin threw a pick six on a bubble screen. We knew from the first game Oregon was capable of going toe-to-toe with Indiana. And in the second game, they couldn't. Why? Because Dante Moore kept making mistakes. So, went down a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but it is kind of wild to just watch the number of similar aspects between those two. And hopefully this year, Oregon will be able to add a national championship to it. Oregon being number 2 in the country in these metrics. Look, it's just a statistical analysis. Do I think it's pretty accurate? Yes. Dante Moore being back definitely helps, and I think would probably have Oregon much lower on this list and a little bit lower, at least in my expectations realm, if it were Dylan Raiola starting this year. But it is Dante Moore, and that's a great piece of news. But there's the realistic side of me that understands that Oregon, with 2 starters back on the O-line and plenty of potential and a proven track record with their O-line coach, 4 starters back on the D-line, a returning freshman All-American at corner, a litany of offensive talent that is going to play in the NFL one day, who I'm going to talk about later on today's show. Everything is there for Oregon to be there, but then there's the cynical side of me. And I can't in good faith just sit here and ignore it. Are you ready for every piece of statistical analysis, commentary, thought, projection, win total, all of that to put Oregon right in the national championship conversation? Are you ready to have your heart ripped out of your chest again? I sure hope so. Earlier this week, Captain Optimism took over for a segment here on this program. Captain Optimism has the day off because every time one of these things come out, I can't help but wonder, will it actually happen again, or will this finally be the year? Because on paper, this breakdown reflects what I've talked about on a number of occasions over the last not quite 3 months since the season ended last year. But frankly, even going back, there were segments and shows I did last summer where I would get questions about Oregon's national title hopes, and last year I wasn't that bullish on them. Now, I picked Oregon to go 11-1. I picked them to beat JMU, picked them to beat Texas Tech, and picked them to beat Indiana. I'm kind of scared to turn off the Oregon fan in my head and put on neutral arbiter of all things college football to make a pick about Oregon this year. I got to tell you, it terrifies me to my core. But if you're looking for another piece of hype data for Oregon's 2026 season, there you go. And by the way, the gap between Oregon and the next team, Notre Dame, is greater than the gap between Notre Dame and the next team, Georgia, and is actually about the same as the gap between number 3 Notre Dame and number 7 Texas Tech. That is how highly regarded this Oregon roster is on paper. So that's simultaneously an optimistic and incredibly negative note to start the show on. But you know what? Can we do it any other way? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter at LockedOnDucks. However you want to get in touch. So, going to pivot to hoops, and then we will rotate or reverberate back to football to wrap today's show. Sean Stewart is back for Oregon. That is a good piece of news. It's not the piece of news. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment, that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. Check them out at turbotax.com/local. Thank you for making this show your first listen or your first view every day. If you tune into every episode, level up and join the Locked On Everydayer Club. You can get your first month of the Everydayer Club for free when you use code MARCH. You'll unlock ad-free episodes and entry into our private listener group chat where I'm hanging out all the time. Click the link in the description of the show notes below to claim your free month with that code MARCH. All right, I got my second segment sip, and I want to transition to a little bit of hoops talk here. Next week, I'm going to try to get back to doing some hoop-centric bonus shows to expand the coverage. It's just been a busy last 10 days or so, but going to do my best to get back to that at some point. Sean Stewart is expected to return for Oregon this year, and Oregon is the third college that he has attended. He's played over 30 games at every single stop, former five-star recruit in the 2023 class, and has just the 1 year of eligibility remaining. There is no way that I can see he could possibly get another year to play college sports unless Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville's bill is made into law and it's actually enforceable, which creates the 5 for 5 proposition that says you get 5 blanket years of eligibility. Doesn't matter if you get hurt. Doesn't matter if you do X, Y, or Z. You get 5 years to play college sports. And detractors argue that it's anti-competitive and that it's not enforceable, which legally speaking might be the case. Me personally, I support a 5 for 5. The guys that are playing 7th, 8th, 9th years of college sports, it's just, I don't think that's a great place for the game to be, and takes away from really the spirit of college sports. You know, having 25-year-olds that are out there, that's not what I think college sports are supposed to be about. So that's a side note. But Sean Stewart this past year started 23 games in his 32 appearances for Oregon, 6.5 points per, 5 boards. He's not a big shot blocker, even though he's 6'9" and ridiculously athletic. He is not a shooter. I think he's only attempted 1 3-pointer in his career. Didn't take one this past year. I wouldn't ever want him to. While playing for Oregon, 53% at the line and 51% from the field. Big reason that he's so efficient is most of the points that he racks up are made in the forms of layups or dunks. A lot of his offense is getting the ball from someone else, rolling or cutting to the rim. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have used a system this offseason to evaluate, Oregon basketball players from this past year, which for those of you that followed all my conversations with that as games went on and the season was just completely and totally lost this past season, what I was looking for is, hey, who would I want to come back? Who would I be okay moving on from? Who am I indifferent about? There were only a couple guys that, for me, were in the want back camp, and that's Jackson Shellstad and Kwame Evans Jr. They've both announced that they're going to enter the portal, so that stinks. But Stewart was definitely in the indifferent camp. There is a role for him that he's capable of playing. The problem, and this is kind of a theme, Des Lindsey entered the portal. I said the same thing about him. Lindsey started, I think, 8 games for Oregon, maybe a little, maybe there was a few more than that. He started more down the stretch. Stewart is the same sort of guy I look at and will be a good marker for how the offseason has gone. If Sean Stewart is looking like a projected starter, then you have not, as an Oregon basketball staff, done the job that you needed to put together a team that's capable of getting back to the NCAA tournament, which is absolutely the standard of success for the program in a given year. So, and remember, Dane Altman runs a program, Dan Lanning runs a program. as we all know. So Stewart is a guy that can give you great energy and a lift off the bench. He's not as good of a rebounder as KJ Evans was, but he's still pretty good at it. He's not a rim protector, energy guy, but he doesn't shoot. He doesn't really get his own shot a whole heck of a lot. He had one big offensive game this year. I forget who it was against. I think he had 20 points. But when you just watch him play, you can see this is not even a 1 year, reclamation's not the right word, developmental project for him to really grow his offensive game. Like his shot is not one that you watch and go, oh man, with just a little work, I feel like he could be a 12 to 13 point a game scorer. Like, no, I think what we saw from Sean Stewart last year is just kind of what he is. And he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school because he is freakishly athletic. I mean, lob plays to the rim, running in transition, jumping up, grabbing rebound. He's great for all that sort of stuff. But, if I were to look at, and I think this is a good way to evaluate any particular player for Oregon basketball that they're going to bring in this transfer portal cycle, or, Seven Spurlock, who they brought in as a late flip in the 2026 high school recruiting cycle. He flipped from Arizona State. I did a segment about him earlier this week. If you're going to evaluate a roster, look at the guys they have and say, okay, when Oregon had a roster capable of contending, like literally 2 seasons ago, because this disaster season is now last season. So the year before, when they were a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, which is by any metric a great year. I know they won 1 game and then lost to Arizona. It's March Madness. That's them's the breaks. The madness can get to anybody there. I say, what role does he have? And on a team like that, would he have that same role? Sean Stewart, as a backup big, could absolutely have had that role on that 5-seed Oregon team. Him and Supreme Cook, a lot of similarities. Everything's around the basket. It's energy. It's a burst. It's not something you are building around. You're not centering your offense around him. He's not an elite defender or shot blocker. Like those 2 guys, I think Sean Stewart really is just Supreme Cook with more athleticism and a little bit less finishing ability around the rim. And that's got its pluses and minuses. So yeah, in that role, would he have worked? 100%. No doubt. But is he a starter on an NCAA tournament team? No. I mean, you just have to look at his own track record so far and see that's not the case. He didn't start a single game at Duke as a freshman. He averaged 2.5 points a game. And I believe that team went to the NCAA tournament for the Blue Devils. They usually make it there. But then he started all 30 games the year before he came to Oregon at Ohio State. And he started 23 with the Ducks. Neither team made the NCAA tournament. So, again, it's fine that he's back. There's a role for him to play. But, again, aside from Taj Ariza, who's a true freshman, and Dane Altman hasn't had a lot of success with a true freshman starting other than Jackson Shelstad in the last several years. If Taj Ariza is a starter, okay, that's perfectly fine. It's college basketball. True freshmen start and succeed all the time. I mean, Duke was 1 possession away from the Final Four, and then, boy, that was rough. But even if you assume Ariza's a starter, you need 4 starting caliber guys. Sean Stewart cannot be a starter. He can be a bench player. That's perfectly fine. But, yeah, right now, Oregon's roster has, we'll say, half a starter on it. There's some work to be done. Portal opens in 5 days. 5 days from now. Next week. Oregon better be busy. So, when I get back, an angle to talk about Oregon's offense that one of you spurred me into, and I just had so much fun. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Check out Robinhood today. This episode also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The tournament is here and winding down, but the best time of the year continues. Brackets, buzzer beaters, upsets. It's nonstop action from tip to final cutdown. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a way to stay in the action all tournament long. Here's the best part. You get up to $300 back in bonus bets every day for 10 days. That means 10 chances to stay involved throughout the entire tournament. You can mix it up however you want. Game picks, futures, or even same-game parlays for bigger potential payouts. It's all there with FanDuel. It's the perfect thing for the tournament because every day there's something new. Different matchups, new storylines, and more ways to get involved as the bracket unfolds. Visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to get in on the action. Everything you want for college football, college basketball, and everything else. It's all over there. Check them out at FanDuel.com. Real quick, before I forget, because sometimes I do, I was incorrect with the last trivia submission. And by the way, submit as many trivia questions as you want. Don't have to pigeonhole it to Tuesday here in the off season. I made a valiant guess. I was incorrect, but boy, I was beating around the bush with this one. The trivia question that I last received was Dante Moore had 10 interceptions last year. Who was the last Oregon quarterback to throw more than that? Bonus points what year? I said Kellen Clemens 05. It was Dennis Dixon 2006. He threw 14. My mind was not even thinking about the possibility of Dennis Dixon, the king of efficiency and the perfect spread option quarterback for the offense, not named Marcus Mariota. I mean, man, 14 interceptions. Okay, the next year he went to the big house and ran the Statue of Liberty and the fake Statue of Liberty because Chip Kelly was a psycho, and it was absolutely awesome. Anyway, this Oregon offense is going to have as much talent on it this year and future NFL talent as I can ever remember. And I think your starting weapons are going to look like Dante Moore handing the ball off. I'm just going to go through the number ones to Jordan Davison. Jamari Johnson will be his tight end. And Dante, again, right there. Just quarterback, running back, tight end. I have got three. Okay. I've got three players. I've got 2 first-round picks and another guy that's probably going in the third. Davison is probably the guy that goes in the third because of positional value. Maybe he could go up into the second. I don't think he's a guy that's going in the first as a running back, but in the second or third, yeah, probably closer to third. But Jamari Johnson, first-round pick. Dante Moore, first-round pick. Then you go to the perimeter. DeCorian Moore could be a first-round pick. We'll see how these next 2 seasons go. Evan Stewart, probably a second-round pick. Maybe he slips to the third because of the injury. Jeremiah McLaughlin, also probably a mid-round pick. McLaughlin is not quite as fluid as Carnell Tate is athletically, but those two guys remind me a lot of each other with the way they just kind of catch everything that is thrown in their direction. So that alone, that group, Poncho also going to be an NFL draft pick. That's as elite of a collection of offensive talent as Oregon has ever compiled for one side of the ball. Now, one of you asked me a most wonderfully joyous and timely question on this front. Question. From one Star Wars fan to another. That's a great way to start a question. What are your starting offensive comparisons to Star Wars characters? Whew. Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and Dan Lanning included. You can leave out O-line if you want to add rotational players. Also, are you excited for the new Darth Maul animated series? Yes. The trailers look 10 out of 10, no notes. I can't wait. Absolutely stoked. So, this was a really fun segment to prepare for, to wrap the podcast today, because it's combining two of my favorite things, Oregon and Star Wars. So I'm going to start with the coaching staff. I'm just going to do one offensive lineman and let him, and it's Poncho, of course, let him represent the entire O-line, because going through each one, it'd be a little repetitive because they're all kind of playing the same spot. But anyway, Dan Lanning, and I'm not kidding with this comparison. This is not a shot in any way, shape, or form. And if you actually understand and watch the original Star Wars trilogy, you know that this is a good comparison. But Dan Lanning, our fearless leader, is absolutely Princess Leia, who is an outstanding, strong, charismatic, and wildly successful leader. That was the easiest one of all of this, by the way. Drew Maringer, now Oregon's offensive coordinator, big shoes to fill. Well, okay, let me rephrase that, because some of you won't feel that way, and I understand why. But he's got a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. He has, however, been in this fight with Dan Lanning from the beginning, but does have a hugely important role to fill as an overseer. He is Obi-Wan/Ben Kenobi. That's, of course, the same guy. So, Obi-Wan Kenobi, that's Drew Maringer. Chris Hampton is, I think, going to be very good as Oregon's defensive coordinator. I think he is elite. There's also that thought in the back of your mind, he might leave soon. Why? Because he might become a head coach within the next couple of years. So, elite, happy to have him, love him, but that thought of, is he going to be here forever, or is he going to pursue another opportunity? That makes him Han Solo. Dante Moore is the face of it all. That's easy. Luke Skywalker. Okay, I changed my mind. Dante Moore was easier to pick than Dan Lanning, but those were the easiest ones. All right. Just getting started here. I still got a bunch more. Jamari Johnson, the tight end, the guy that holds everything together, that is a quarterback safety blanket, that has been really, really good in everything that he's been asked to do. I think his blocking can take a step forward, but can wear a lot of different hats, do a lot of different things, and do them well. Glue guy, he's R2-D2. Jordan Davison is an incredibly powerful runner, but he's a good guy. Good guy, powerful, Mace Windu. DeCorian Moore is the highly rated recruit, the young, exciting up-and-comer. He's Ahsoka Tano. That might be the highest compliment that I can give with any of these. The Obi-Wan for Drew Maringer is pretty high. Jeremiah McLaughlin, I am chair of the J-Mac fan club, as I am chair of the Amari Washington fan club. Too often, J-Mac is overlooked, but not on this show. He is Kit Fisto. Some people don't know what these names are, and that's okay. Look them up. It's fantastic. I'm going to save the last one because, okay, I'm going to flip the order of this a little bit. Poncho is an underappreciated protector who hopefully is going to meet a much better fate in the end. He's Owen Lars. Very underrated protector. Absolutely served a vital role. Okay. Here's the last one. And I'm going to be very specific with this. Evan Stewart is poised to make a big comeback after bursting onto the scene and doing things that we had seldom seen before and looking incredibly cool while doing it all. Just think about the one-handed catch that he just vacuums in and he's just floating in the air, okay? He's about to make a big comeback. He is Maul. Notice, that is a one-word name. One. Just the one word. Because if you actually know, I'm not calling Evan Stewart the bad guy, though going into, dark mode or villain mode, hey, I could see Dan Lannon doing that, or wanting his team to do that from time to time. No Darth, just Maul. Real Star Wars fans know exactly what I'm talking about here. Not a bad guy, not necessarily a good guy. I don't need him to be the nice, easygoing guy. I need him to have a little bit of that killer instinct. I think he does. So that was my favorite segment of the year, and I would love to host Locked On Star Wars one day. So take note, Locked On Leadership, though I still like this show. Also, to wrap today's show, I have to point this out. Yesterday was April Fool's. And I got a few of my Locked On Ducks insiders on subtext yesterday and sent him a message saying that I was resigning the host of the show. Oh, that was a good time. So if you're still tuned in at this point, then you're probably diehard enough to appreciate that. I got some of you with it, and I'm not sorry about it. If I were really mean, I would have sent two messages like an hour apart. But I sent it all in one message, so you knew I was kidding by the end of it. But deep down, I am a cruel and evil, evil man who loves hosting the show. And I'm glad you tuned in. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.